What's up, everybody? Let me see if I can fix this camera so it stops making me blurry, because it's annoying. It's the autofocus, and I don't know how to fix it. Okay, so welcome to F the Rest. That is going to be the name of the show. And we will officially title this episode number 1. There's a couple things that I'm going to talk about tonight. Oops. I screwed up already. I didn't go live on Instagram. Alright, so let's start from the rip. This autofocus sucks. Audio low, brother? Alright, hold on. Give me 2 seconds, Matt. I can fix that. And that's why I'm glad I got people like you. Sound. Microphone volume. Just try that. Matt, how's it coming through now? Matt, you still there? Still low. How about now? A little better, but go higher. Alright, hold on. How we doing? Are we there? Yo, Matt, just so you know, bro, I appreciate you very much. Are we good? Volume good? You know, Matt might be quicker to message me on Facebook than for the comments to come through. Trying to get this live stream going. I'm gonna lose people. Alright, I'm going. Okay, so I'm gonna start over. Guys, my name is Ricky. Welcome to the channel. I'm officially gonna call the show F the Rest. It is an America First channel, and that is the direction that this show is gonna be going down. I'm going to talk about a couple things tonight. First thing that we're going to talk about is Baron Coleman did a podcast 2 nights ago. He brought up the police radio transmissions from the day that Charlie was taken away from us. And he found some interesting things that may have been overlooked. And while he was live streaming, I did a Google Trend search on this person's name and screenshotted it. And what do you know? The day after Barron's podcast, this person's name was wiped clean from Google Trends, and he was searched in Philadelphia in June. And if you go back to Google Trends and you try to search it, it is no longer there. I personally screenshotted it. I will share that screenshot with you guys. But first, I want to go into watching some of Barron's coverage of this, because he is the one that put me onto the Google Trend searches, and he is killing it. And I want to play for you the audio recordings of this person of interest that was questioned and let go. So, give me 2 seconds and let me share screen and share Barron's screen. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. All right, there we go. All right, so I'm gonna play this for you guys. We're gonna go through a couple minutes of Barron's show, and I want you guys to tell me what you think.
Couple of minutes here, a local news story from Texas, and this news story will introduce our character tonight, a guy we have overlooked, I believe. So here we go.
The manhunt for Charlie Kirk's killer stretches into another day. Authorities looking for this person of interest they need help identifying. But as police continue their search,
we located a couple of persons of interest.
A North Texas family who calls this 25-year-old their son says the search for truth has already cost them.
And after clearing them of being suspects, they face scrutiny. They face threats.
Those threats, the scrutiny, underscored by Utah DPS Commissioner Bo Mason Thursday, fell partly on Zechariah Qureshi Wednesday. He was questioned after Kirk's murder, named the second person of interest that day. Initially, FBI Director Kash Patel called him the subject for this horrific shooting on X. But after an interrogation, he was cleared. Not before, however, at least one major media outlet named...
I'm just going to pause this real quick. If you guys have not heard the police transmissions from right after, well, we'll call it the event, they're wild. They're wild. The local PD was under order by the feds not to interview anybody and not to question anybody. Some really, really sketchy things that don't make sense. So.
Him. Social media users then started peering into Qureshi's life. This is just one post. It has 25,000 views displaying Qureshi's BYU student photo. His background on LinkedIn is also uploaded online. His family's home address in North Texas posted too. Very little of it has been taken down. His family tells us they were never told why he was questioned in the first place.
They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that.
Qureshi's mother, who lives in North Texas, spoke with us by phone Thursday, saying local police are ensuring their safety. We're not saying where to respect their privacy. She mentioned Qureshi graduated from a North Texas high school and then BYU. He lives in Utah now, newly engaged, and an MBA student. She went on to say that her son was in the crowd when Kirk was shot. The 25-year-old has attended a Turning Point USA event before and is devastated for Kirk's family, his mother said. In Utah, the manhunt goes on. But for Qureshi, his family asks, the finger pointing at them to stop.
So this was a news story in the very day after the Charlie Kirk event. And it identified a guy, and I'd kind of forgotten all about it. There was a guy that was detained. It didn't say arrested, but detained in the first few hours after Charlie Kirk went down, and his name was Zechariah Qureshi. His full name is Zechariah Ahmed Qureshi. I heard that name initially, and I thought, oh, there's a Muslim component. There must be a Muslim component to this.
You can turn your newsletter into an actual business. You just need to
Sorry,
stop
guys.
using
I don't
5
pay
platforms
for
to do what
YouTube
one was
Premium,
literally
so
built for.
skip the ad.
Well, there's not. He is Mormon. He is a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints, and he is an active member. Like, he went on his mission. He went to BYU. He actually just got married in the last few months. And he is an interesting character. I'm going to dive a little deeper into him because when we were doing the timeline last night, his name actually came up multiple times, if you recall. I didn't mean to play that if you just heard it running in the background. His name actually came up multiple times. But we're going to get to that in a second. I want to go next to an article that mentions his father. And his father gives us an idea of where was Zechariah Qureshi in the time when Charlie Kirk was first taken down, as well as where he was in the hours after Charlie Kirk was taken down. So this is the article here. It's headlined absolutely uncalled for and insane. This is the family of a person of interest interrogated by police on Charlie Kirk's assassination speaks out. So here is what we have. This is the father's quote. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely uncalled for and insane. This is the father of the man detained by police. That is Zechariah Qureshi's father. We'll talk about him in a minute, but just for now, let's just assume he's the father. Now, I want to scroll down because it's going to give us some biographical information. Zechariah Qureshi, a resident of Provo, returned Latter-day Saint missionary, attended the event as a supporter. Qureshi's father told the news organization that his son was mistakenly detained by police, and his son had absolutely no role in the assassination. Well, what was his son doing? Qureshi said he was in line to ask a question. I'll say this. If that's true, I cannot find evidence of that. I've looked at every video, every photograph I can find. I don't see him in line to ask a question, but I admittedly don't know that I've seen the entire line to ask a question. But his father says he was in line to ask a question. He was just 20 feet away when the shooting occurred. He said his son went back to his Provo apartment before being found by federal agents and police officers who brought him in to be interrogated, despite there being no evidence to implicate him in the assassination. So he was released and then cleared. This is according to DPS Commissioner Bo Mason, who, as we looked at the very beginning of my investigation into the Charlie Kirk taking downing, we recall Bo Mason appeared quite prominently in the Google Trend searches overseas and in the District of Columbia here in these United States.
Now I'm going to pause this for a second. Now Barron talks about it. Barron got on the scene because he was the one using these Google Trend searches, and a lot of interesting things popped up. And while Barron was live and I was watching this, I did a Google Trend search. And wait until you see what happens with that.
But I don't want to get into that part of it. We can explore that part later as we do the timeline if we need to. But I want to focus on the federal agents component because it reminds me a lot of what happened in the domestic violence arrest with the Boston Marathon bombing. Do you remember the open I did a few episodes ago? If you don't, it's worth going back and watching. I don't remember what I was wearing or what show it was, but It was 3 or 4 shows ago. And there was the Boston Marathon bombing, and they captured the one kid and tried him, but the other kid there were 2 brothers, and one of them was killed at the scene or in a shootout after the scene. And another person shows up, and he is later arrested. That was the guy named Daniel Morley, if you recall. Daniel Morley was arrested a couple of months later, and he was found when he was arrested for domestic violence against his mom and his mom's boyfriend. He was threatening to harm them, threatening to burn their house down, threatening to detonate bombs. So the local police showed up, and they were surprised. The local police were stunned when FBI agents rolled in right after they got there. And what they found was bomb-making equipment that was nearly identical, or I want to say identical, but I'm going to hedge and say allegedly identical. Allegedly identical to the bombs that went off at the Boston Massacre. The Boston bombing. Nevertheless, Daniel Morley did not face bomb charges or terrorism charges or anything like that. No aiding and abetting, nothing related to the Boston Marathon bombing. It was all about the domestic violence against his mom and his mom's boyfriend. And then he was mysteriously null-prossed. They dismissed the charges. And as you look back on it, you say, man, that guy sure looked like he was involved. There was more to it than that. People identified him at a robbery near the scene. I mean, there was a lot going on for him not to face any charges whatsoever, or even any additional investigation. So I looked at this and thought, man, federal agents showed up at this guy's apartment? Well, what was he doing in the meantime? What made them show up at his apartment anyway? You know, there weren't a lot of people detained in the aftermath. There was the George Zinn, but he was detained because he took his hat off, started waving, his pants fell down. He was saying, I did it, I did it, I did it. It was me, I did it, I did it, I did it. Well,
Let's just stop and think about that for a second. The odds of somebody having their pants fall down and waving their hands in the air saying, I did it, I did it. Well, that's a pretty damn good distraction. And just in case you guys don't know, George Zinn was also present at the Boston Marathon bombings that were just mentioned. And he was also at 9/11 at the World Trade Centers. So, do the odds of one person being at all 3 of those events, and they are astronomical. Back to Baron.
that's interesting to me.
If you're an established video agency owner who's struggling with one-offs and referrals and you don't know where your next client is coming from.
Once I start
So he's
making money, I'll
detained.
pay
He's
for
eventually
YouTube
arrested.
Premium.
He's found with images of minors on his phone, and then I don't know if he pleaded guilty or was already tried and convicted. I don't know, but he's in jail on those, waiting those charges, or tried on those charges. I'm not sure which. And the only other person that they actually arrested and detained, I think, was this guy. And so what was it about this guy that landed him on the radar? We're going to look at that. And to do so, we got to go back to what we talked about last night. We got to go back and listen to some of the audio clips that popped up last night. And I'm going to pull those up, and we will listen to them together. And you guys, you tell me if you think this guy should have been looked at a little closer, maybe detained. Because the first time his name is mentioned is at 3:11 p.m. 3:11 p.m. Now, just to give you an idea of when this is relative to the Charlie Kirk Big Bang, the Big Bang happened at 12:23. So at 12:23 to 3:11 is almost 3 hours. Or no, yeah, almost 3 hours. That's plenty of time for anyone who was at the event to get home. Because his dad, if you recall, said he had gone back to his apartment and he didn't know why he was detained. It was just a comedy of errors. So what did the police say that this guy was doing in the meantime? So we'll listen to this, and you guys tell me if his story lines up to his dad's story. I have my doubts, but I will let you guys be the ultimate call because you guys are, in fact, the jury.
Continuing attempt to locate active shooter suspect.
Tactical vest and a black mask, possibly carrying a rifle. Toyota Corolla S820 Bravo Lima. Suspect possible name Zechariah Qureshi, date of birth 5/12 of 2000. The male is going from hospital to hospital looking for the victim. Again, use 10-0. Notify if located in detail 1511.
So if you didn't hear it, I'll read you the transcript here. Continuing to locate active shooter suspect, tactical vest and a black mask, possibly carrying a rifle. Who do they identify that person as? Driving a Toyota Corolla, and then they give a license plate. Then they say suspect possible name, Zechariah Qureshi. Then they give a birth date. To spoil the surprise, it's his birthday. The male is going from hospital to hospital looking for the victim. The male is going from hospital to hospital looking for the victim. Then they say use 10-0. That is extreme caution. Use extreme caution and notify if located. Then they identify the time of that broadcast as 1511, and they go on and do a description one more time just in case you didn't get it. It's coming up.
Height 5'11", 198 pounds. Hazel eyes, blonde hair, male. And the broadcast 1511.
So again, end of broadcast 1511. Height 5'11", 198, hazel eyes, blonde hair, male. That is an accurate description of the guy we just looked at. That is an accurate description of the guy that was just picked up. They also said the guy was in a tactical vest, a black mask, possibly carrying a rifle, and going from hospital to hospital looking for the victim. Hospital to hospital looking for the victim.
I'm going to pause this for a second. Right? So, where would the police come up with that kind of specific information that he is driving a Toyota Corolla? They have his exact description in black tactical gear, a black mask, carrying a long rifle, going hospital to hospital looking for the victim. We didn't even hear about this on the news. Nobody covered this. Nobody talked about it. That's because they got Tyler Robinson and they got the narrative that they wanted. But yet, shit like this happens and goes unchecked. So let's keep listening.
I am trying to find an innocent explanation for that. I'm trying to find an innocent explanation for why anyone would think he's doing that if he wasn't doing that. His dad said he went back to his apartment. Well, if he just went back to his apartment, why is anyone trying to track him down? Again, let's just go through the timeline. 12:23, you have the Big Bang. Let's say there's 15 or 20 minutes of total chaos before anyone goes to their car. That puts us at, let's say, 12:40, 12:45. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt. 22 minutes of total chaos. Well, then you walk back to your car, 20 minutes. You're looking 1 o'clock, maybe 5 after 1. There's some traffic. Let's say it's 30 minutes of extra traffic. He lives a couple of miles away from campus. Let's say it's 30 minutes of extra traffic. That's 1:30. And then he's 5 minutes from home. That's 1:35. Let's add an extra hour. Just because sometimes timelines get off and sometimes, let's just say it took him an extra hour to get home. Well, that's 2:30. It's 2 total hours, more than 2 hours after.
Maybe he stopped at the same Dairy Queen that Tyler Robinson went to, or the steakhouse. Maybe they had dinner together.
The Big Bang to go literally down the street. He could have walked it 10 times in that period of time. And he's still out there, and the police say he's in that car going hospital to hospital looking for the victim and may have a rifle. That's oddly specific. That's oddly specific information to have.
Now, there's a couple of you watching, and I would love to know if any of you guys can come up with some kind of logical reason as to why he would be doing that.
Have a license plate number, a description of the car, a description of the suspect. Is that the only broadcast about this? Actually, no, there's more. I will play it here shortly after I share it back on the screen, because I'm not one of those people who just plays an audio and looks over here while you guys are watching me and I think you're listening to it. I wouldn't do such a thing.
Apparently you can go from 0 to a complete site in just a single prompt with Wix Harmony. I don't know if this is going to be possible.
Also have male carrying a black bag with tan straps. Possibly driving a 2016 black Toyota Corolla, 28 Sierra 820 Bravo Lima. Suspect is Zechariah Qureshi, 512 of 2000. Male is going hospital to hospital looking for the victim.
Hospital to hospital looking for the victim.
Test 1512.
In the broadcast 1512. So this is now 3:12 p.m. They still have not identified, they still have not located this person. They're still on the lookout for him. And someone in police world out there is reporting that he's out there going hospital to hospital in this car, fitting his own description, looking for Charlie Kirk. That's a weird set of facts. That's the type of facts that will have federal agents and state law enforcement showing up at your door. So let's go one more description here. Actually, we have two more, but here's one more in this immediate time period right here. And they'll tell us where he was and when. And I don't know if they're using the flock cameras or they have their own traffic cameras, or this was an officer spotted him or somebody made a phone call and said, I'm looking at him. But there's very specific time period here where he was last seen.
20 Bravo Lima, Sierra 82 Bravo Lima local, last seen eastbound University Parkway in Orem. About 6 minutes ago now. Correction, about 14 minutes ago now. No ID on the shooter at this time.
So they're saying 14 minutes ago. Now, this broadcast was at 3:17 p.m. And what the dispatcher is saying is at 3:03 p.m., and that's an oddly specific time. It's not like we saw him a little bit ago or in the last 15 or 20 minutes. I mean, they're talking to the minute. 14 minutes ago. 14 minutes ago, he was last seen eastbound on University Parkway. I will pull up a map and we can look at East University Parkway, or we can look at University Parkway ourselves, and we can get an idea of where he was last seen. Because it is telling about what he was doing. I'll have to pull up a Google Maps version because Earth does not have the the labels of the roads in here.
I don't understand how.
All right, here is University
None
Parkway.
of this was covered.
This is University Parkway right here. It's this. Oh, not the Walmart. We're not going to the Walmart, people. We're not those people tonight. All right, so here's where Charlie Kirk was taken down. You guys recall this. If you zoom out, this is University Parkway right here. This spotting was after 3 p.m. almost 3 hours after Charlie Kirk was taken down. He's spotted going east on University Parkway. So he's driving right next to the campus on University Parkway. Now, maybe he was on this side of the interstate, but University Parkway ends right here. Maybe he was a little further over here to drive east. I mean, maybe he was in front of the strip mall across from campus, but he was close. And so what we have here is we have a series of dispatches from the police that say they've spotted this guy going hospital to hospital looking for the suspect. We have a series of dispatches that say he may be armed. He may have a rifle and is wearing tactical gear. We have a series of dispatches that accurately describe him as 5'11", blonde hair, hazel eyes. That's a very accurate description. We have a series of broadcasts that accurately describe his vehicle. It's a Toyota Corolla, black. We have a series of broadcasts that accurately give his license plate. I'm not going to repeat it again. You guys heard it. Only because I don't want to say it, not because, I mean, it's public record now. And then you have a very specific time, 3:03 p.m., 3:02, maybe 3:03, where he was seen right next to campus, driving east. And if you look around, there are 3 or 4 different hospitals in the area. I would submit to you he went to at least 2, because they said he's going from hospital to hospital looking for the victim. This is problematic. This is really problematic just now, and we've not even gone any further than this, and we will tonight. We will go much further.
Yep.
But we've already spotted a problematic set of facts. We've got a young man who's in the right age range to know these people, perhaps. I don't know. Early 20s. We've got a young man in his early 20s that the police are looking for because he's allegedly doing suspicious things. And we also have another fact that I think is critical is that his father said he went home. He went to his apartment. Well, you can't go to your apartment, also go hospital to hospital and drive down University Parkway. Those two things are incompatible. And so his father, right now, I look and say, I don't believe what his father's saying.
Yep.
Notice they didn't quote the kid. They only quoted the father. The kid is exercising, well, he's remaining silent. Let's say that.
Yep.
He's remaining silent on the issue. I don't know if he's exercising his right to remain silent. I don't know if I was his lawyer, I would tell him to remain silent. So let's dig in just a little bit because now I'm intrigued. We have one more broadcast that I want to play, and then we will look a little further at who is this guy.
Wait until you see what
one
his
more
parents
quick broadcast I want to play. This one's only about 5 seconds, so this is going to be a quick one.
Pretty interesting.
Let me get the time up so I can find it. This is a very, very quick broadcast here. It's going to take me. The time stamping on these is just miserable. You can only go 30 seconds at a time. So if you want to play a 5-second clip, you got to go in the past and you got to play like 10 or 15 seconds of silence. But these are just recordings of the radio broadcast from that day, and we can correspond the times. And so this broadcast I'm going to play here corresponds to 4:45 p.m. 4:45 p.m. Now I want you to listen to the name that is identified.
This is almost 5 hours after he was shot.
That's the sound of an American oil company hard
Sorry.
at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello.
So they're going to the apartment in Provo, Zechariah's landlord. That's 4:45 p.m. If they're talking to his landlord, I have to believe that he's not there yet. Now, maybe he was. I have no idea why they would need to get in touch with his landlord if he's at his apartment. Just knock on his door, he'll answer the door. If he had nothing to do with it, he should say, come on in. Actually, he shouldn't. He should say, go away without a warrant, even if he had nothing to do with it. But whatever, irrelevant. That's my legal advice to you guys. Don't ever let him in to ask questions. Oh, are you serious? There was no sound? Oh, no.
He
I've already
does
closed
this
it.
all
Here's
the
what they
time.
said. Apartment in Provo, Zechariah's landlord. It was 4:45 p.m. I'll play it again. I don't want you guys to think I'm just making stuff up. But now I got to find it again, and then I'd silenced it because of the maybe I didn't share it. I'd silenced it because of the long gap in order to queue it up. So let me get it queued up again, and then I'll share it. I just pulled an Ian. Tell Ian I'm sorry. If I had to pay Ian $5 every time I pulled an Ian, I'd be broke. Y'all be fine. You'd find me out on the street corner panhandling. Let me get you here. Come on, guys. Here we go. Now let me know if you can't hear it. You should be able to hear it in full blast.
Apartment in Provo. Zechariah's landlord.
So they're going to an apartment in Provo. Zechariah's landlord. That's what they said. Now, why are they needing to get in touch with the landlord if Zechariah's there? Because his dad said he went back to the apartment. Dad said he went back to the apartment. The police department disagrees. The police department says somebody matching his description, matching his car's description, matching his car's license plate, is driving hospital to hospital, perhaps with a gun, dressed in all black, looking for the victim, looking for Charlie Kirk. The police department says he's driving down University Parkway at 3:03. The police department says they're needing to talk to his landlord at 4:45 p.m. And so we have to ask, now that we've looked at all this, now that we've opened the discussion on the fact that I don't believe his father, the fact that I'm weirded out by all these facts, they detained him, they questioned him, and then they just let him go with no charges. I'm curious who this guy is. Who is Zechariah Qureshi? Now, I will preface everything I'm going to say tonight. Unless your name is Candace Owens, because she obviously doesn't listen to me. She takes every piece of advice I give, and she just disregards it. But unless your name is Candace Owens, please don't reach out to this guy. Don't knock on his door. Don't text him. Don't comment on his Facebook pages. Don't comment on Instagram. Don't try to track him down. Don't try to interfere with him. Don't just leave him alone.
And don't try to do any Google trend searches on him, because after this episode of Barron's podcast, it was wiped clean. And I have the pictures to prove it. So let's go back to Barron and then share that screenshot for you.
Now, if you're Candace Owens, you're going to do whatever you want. But you can do that, Candace. I'm okay with it. I'm going to allow it. The rest of you should listen to me. Let me speak authoritatively. Who is this guy? What do we know about him? This is Zechariah Qureshi.
Let me go full screen for you guys.
He is a senior analyst at Epic Ventures. He lives in, apparently, Salt Lake City, Utah. I think he lives in Provo. I don't know why it says Salt Lake. Here's about him. Global business and Middle East studies. Interested in B2B software as a service, emerging markets, global political risks, speaks Dutch and Arabic. And again, this guy's a member of the LDS Church. He is not a member of Islam. He's not any Middle Eastern religions or anything like that. Now let's look at his bio a little bit. I think it'll give us a little indication of more about him here. Let's start at the bottom. He went on a mission trip to the Netherlands. That was his mission trip. Went on a mission trip to the Netherlands. We'll talk about that in just a second. Then he went to BYU. When he finished BYU, he became a student assistant in the Arabic flagship program. He became a teaching assistant in the Department of Asian and Near Eastern Studies. Then he goes into the private sector here and becomes a business analyst intern in the Washington, D.C. area. Then he goes to Oman. He goes to Oman for a company called Phase Ventures as an intern. Then he goes to Heritage Foundation.
If you guys don't know where Oman is in Jordan, bordering Philadelphia, our greatest ally. It's coincidence.
Heritage Foundation is like the grown-up version of TPUSA. The Heritage Foundation, if you're not familiar with Heritage Foundation, look it up. When Donald Trump got elected the first time in 2016, I had a lot of friends that applied to go work with the Trump administration. Several of them got jobs. There's something called the Plum Book. The Plum Book, when you go to work, when you become the new president, they put all the president gets thousands of appointments, like 3, 4, 5,000 appointments. And the president doesn't know that many people, so he relies on staff. And they have something called a Plum Book. And this Plum Book advertises all the available appointments. And it's from low level to high level. Like the attorney general's in there. And so is like the guy at some little agency you've never heard of who's deputy general counsel. They're all in there. So I looked into it because I had friends calling me saying, hey, I want to go work for the Trump administration. What do I need to do? And I said, well, you're going to need to look in the Plum Book. And then so I called around and I finally found somebody who knew what the heck they were talking about. And they said, no. Trump isn't vetting people. Heritage is. I said, what? Yeah, Heritage Foundation's doing all the hiring.
Dropshipping has never been this easy. I know this because I've built multiple six-figure stores.
So, I just want you guys to think about that one for a second. Trump did none of his own vetting for the first administration, which is probably why this administration looks completely different, because Trump didn't pick any of the his cabinet. The Heritage Foundation did. And if you don't know the background on the Heritage Foundation, that is the Republican conservative version of Act Blue. Tied to the intelligence agencies. Probably very heavily. Just like Act Blue is for the Democrats. The Heritage Foundation they're the ones that came out with Project 2025. And they are the ones driving most of our foreign policy. So, just a little background on the Heritage Foundation and who and what they do.
We're doing all the appointments. So this is not some fly-by-night charity. This is a charity that has significant pull in Washington, D.C.
It's not a charity.
Significant pull in Washington, D.C. They're the ones that came up with Project 2025 that all the Democrats were freaking out about. Oh, if Trump gets in, he's going to institute Project 2025. That was a Heritage paper. They're a big deal. They're a big deal. So he goes to work at Heritage in Washington, D.C. So he goes Washington, D.C. to Oman, Jordan, back to Washington, D.C. And while he's there, he's assigned to the Davis Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy. He drafts policy recommendations, identifies opportunities. He researches blind spots and weak points where foreign governments are susceptible to foreign infiltration. State and local governments are susceptible to foreign infiltration. So he's doing like big boy work. He's only there a few months, but he's getting involved in Washington, D.C. big boy politics. Then he goes to work as a sales intern at Built Incorporated. We'll revisit this in just a moment. Who is Built? But it's in Texas. It's where he's from. He's originally from Texas, the Fort Worth area. The greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. So he goes to Built, and he's there for a few months. Then he goes into the educational field, and he becomes a CASA Fellow at Boren Scholar at the Institute of International Education. The IIE works closely with the United States Department of State. This is, I'm not saying it's like a spy operation operating as an NGO, but it kind of looks like a spy operation operating as an NGO, for being honest. They put teachers in foreign countries. And so he applies and is selected for the Center for Arabic Study Abroad program. for intensive Arabic language, culture, and area studies, training at Qasid Arabic Institute in Amman, Jordan. And he finally leaves there after 10 months. And he stays in the public sector and goes to the University of Utah and starts working as a senior analyst with University of Utah Ventures. And if you guys know, the University of Utah is like Utah Valley University, let's just admit it, it's a spy training school, guys. It's just what it is. We'll talk about that in a second. So he's a senior analyst for University of Utah Ventures, and simultaneously, he's a senior analyst for Epic Ventures. And Epic Ventures is a venture capital firm that invests in technology companies with a focus on SaaS, healthcare, security, and future of work sectors. And if you dig into this, what you'll find is Epic and Utah Ventures, University of Utah Ventures, they teamed up for a $200 million investment. Epic Ventures, where this guy works, made a $200 million investment into University of Utah Ventures. That is not small time investing. That is big boy business. This guy's working for both of these entities. And he's a senior analyst. And recall, he speaks Dutch and Arabic, and he has all this stuff. He was an Arabic linguist at the LDS Church. Still is, I guess. And he went to BYU, and he's fully proficient in Arabic and Dutch, and he was an Eagle Scout. So this is who he is. Now, that's just a primer, right? We've got more. We've got more. So let me show you a little something on the Dutch people. If you end up in the Netherlands at any point.
So I'm gonna skip this, and I'm gonna go into what the Built Incorporation is, what they do, who started and runs Built, and I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions to that. Let me see. Share this tab instead. Okay, so Built Incorporated, a Texas-based defense industrial software company. What Built Incorporated is and what it does. A software as a service company that creates 3D interactive instruction used for assembly and installation repair, maintenance and repair, technical training, field service, and operational procedures. Its core product is mobile and XR, extended reality platform that replaces paper manuals with interactive 3D step-by-step usable on phones, tablets, and even devices like Apple Vision Pro. Technology is used by consumer brands, furniture, appliances, fitness equipment, commercial and industrial companies, telecom, HVAC utilities, government and military organizations for training and maintenance tasks. The idea: reduce errors, speed up training, improve safety, and standardize procedures. Government and military contracts. Types and dollar amounts. Major U.S. Air Force contract. I have no idea what that stands for. STRAFTFI. I don't know. Agency, U.S. Air Force. Air Force Works, Air Force Research Laboratory. Contract type, strategic funding increase program. Value, $15 million. Purpose, expand interactive training and maintenance systems for Air Force personnel using Built's 3D instruction platform. This is their largest publicly disclosed federal contract and supports mission readiness and maintenance training. Earlier cyber contracts, DoD Innovation Pipeline. Built has received multiple Small Business Innovation Research Awards from the Department of Defense. $1.5 million Phase 2 contract, Air Force Ventures. Purpose, deploy 3D interactive training tools for maintainers, year 2020. $50,000 Cyber Phase 1 contract, initial proof of concept and pilot program for the Air Force ecosystem. Navy and other defense testing contracts. Built has had contracts or pilot programs with the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, Naval Sea Systems Command. What are these government contracts for? Across all contracts, the core government use cases are military maintenance and repair, interactive guides for servicing aircraft, vehicles, and equipment, reduce human error, and improve standardization. Technical training, train new recruits faster using interactive 3D procedures, reduce reliance on manuals and instructors. So basically what this company did is they developed the software that Tony Stark uses in the Avengers and has a 3D model of his Iron Man suit and how he designs it and builds it, and that is what these people made for the military. So you would say that they are pretty tied into the Department of Defense, and I would assume the three-letter agencies, because if the military is using it, the agencies are using it. So we'll keep going. Operational readiness, faster track completion, increased safety in high-risk environments, standardized procedures across units. Estimated total government contract value, $15 million for the Air Force, $1.5 million for Phase 1, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Don't get confused with Built rewards. Okay. Who owns Built? The company was founded in 2015 by Nate Henderson, co-founder, chairman, CEO. Ahmed Qureshi, co-founder, president, and COO. So, this kid's father is a co-founder and the president of this company with millions and millions of dollars in government contracts. And this is the kid that was going hospital to hospital in black tactical gear with a gun. The police were told to use extreme caution while approaching him. The father said that he went back to his apartment, which, based on the police transmissions that we listened to, didn't happen. His father also said that he was in line for a question at the event, where if you go through Blake Bednar's tapes or any of the recordings on X, you do not see this kid. People have scoured for hours trying to find him. And he is not in any of the tapes. So, now, if you guys don't know Baron, that's Baron Coleman. He has gotten, what his claim to fame was using Google Trends to see if anybody was searching for these people, for anybody involved in the case prior to the assassination. So the original search results showed all sorts of things, like Tyler Robinson being searched in Washington, D.C. and in Philadelphia months and days before the shooting. The hospital where Charlie was brought in Washington and Philadelphia. The surgeon who worked on him searched in Washington and Philadelphia. And this is all prior to what happened. Months prior to what happened. There was probably 20 different names associated with Charlie, with the hospital, Tyler Robinson. Lance Twiggs was searched in Philadelphia and in Washington. So during Baron's podcast, I figured I would do a Google Trend search. And I searched for Zechariah Qureshi. And what do you know? Zechariah Qureshi, June 1st to June 7th, 2025, in Israel over the past 12 months. Now, we're going to do the same exercise, and I'm going to walk you guys through it, and you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. So, let's see. What do I need to do here? I need to, what do I need to do here? I need to remove that. Okay. Let's add this to stage. All right. Let's go to google.com. Google Trends. Google Trends. All right. Let's search. How do you spell his name? How do you spell his name? Oh, I'm spelling it wrong. Okay. Jesus. So let's search Zechariah Qureshi, right? So, did I spell it right? Hold on, I gotta double check. I didn't spell it right. Okay. Copy. Alright. Let's go back here. Paste. Enter. Zechariah Qureshi. Search term. Alright. United States. Past 24 hours. Nothing. Past week. Well, that's interesting. Let's these are the days of Barron's podcast, where he brought up Zechariah, right? We'll do past month. Okay. Past 3 months. Alright, this goes back to December. Past year. Okay. Now we got a huge jump. September 6th to 13th. That is right when Charlie was taken away from us. So, I decided to change my search location. And I decided to look in Israel. And I did it over a 12-month period. And what do you know? He is no longer showing up in Israel over the 12-month period. I find that very interesting. I find it very interesting that after Barron's podcast and bringing up Google Trends, that his name would be wiped clean in Israel when I have a screenshot that I took saying June 1st to June 7th, 2025, it peaked at 100. So there was a good amount of searches for his name throughout that time. And now that data is wiped clean. Just like all the other data that was on Google Trends has been wiped clean. Like Tyler Robinson showing up in Philadelphia, Lance Twiggs being searched in Philadelphia, the hospital being searched in Philadelphia, the surgeon being searched in Philadelphia, the campus being searched in Philadelphia, all prior to Charlie's death. So, if there was nothing to see here, you would think that they wouldn't wipe the data. But the data got wiped. So, usually, when they wipe the data, you're over some kind of target. There's no reason for his name to have been wiped from Google Trends in 2 days. Because I did this search 2 days ago while Barron was live. And now the data's gone. And his dad was caught lying to whatever newspaper he talked to. He was seen in black tactical gear going hospital to hospital with a gun, and the police were told to use extreme caution. So nothing about what they're saying makes any sense. The feds apparently went to this kid's apartment, detained him, and released him with no charges. And we never heard anything about it. Never heard anything about it. And nobody looked into it. And now that Barron talked about it, his data's been wiped. So I don't even know what to make of that. There's something there. and his brother. All right, I'm gonna bring. What do I do? All right, I'm gonna bring this at the stage. Okay, let's go back to Google. So, Zechariah Qureshi's brother, his brother is, I believe his brother's in the Air Force, and his brother has quite a military background. Give me a second here. How did I do this last night? Oh, I know what I did. I did it on Facebook. Search Facebook. Qureshi. See all. I'm gonna have to switch accounts. Give me a second. Okay, there he is. Zach AQ. All right. About friends. Let's search his dad. Ahmed Qureshi. Okay. All friends. All right. So, Juliet Qureshi is, I believe, his mom. Now, my other question is, when you look at all these relatives, right, do they seem like the type of people that would be part of the LDS church? Because they don't really look like the Latter-day Saints kind of people to me, but I could be wrong. Okay. This is from 2021. Alright. Tor Qureshi, Fort Worth, Texas. I don't know why I can't find his brother's page anymore. Alright, it really doesn't matter. Either way, his brother is in the Air Force. His brother's got an extensive background in the Air Force. His father has huge military contracts. This kid was seen going hospital to hospital dressed in black tactical gear. His dad lied about him being at the apartment because his dad said he went right back to the apartment, and at 4:45 they were still looking for him, and that is about 5 hours after the Big Bang. He's nowhere in any of the videos from that day. And he said he was in line to ask a question, which is a lie. So, not sure what to think. You take all that with the fact that the data was wiped from Google Trends, and there's something there. I don't know what. None of this shit makes sense. Absolutely none of it. What we do know for a fact is he wasn't shot with a 30-06 because his head would have been it would have looked like a water balloon of pink mist. So that narrative is a lie. And if that narrative is a lie, then nothing can be believed. And that means the administration is running cover for what happened to Charlie. And if they're running cover for what happened to Charlie, they were either involved or they're covering for somebody else, which makes them complicit, which to me is the same thing as pulling the trigger themselves. There is no difference. So, for any internet sleuths out there that may happen to see this, this is someplace to look. This is definitely someplace to look. So, we're going to move on to our next story. Now, I'm supposed to say clip that, and StreamYard will clip that. So, we'll see if that happens when I go back to edit this. We're going to go back to our second story, which is the story of Tucker Carlson being detained in Israel as he was trying to leave the country. It wasn't Tucker, it was his two producers. Their passports were taken. They were taken into separate rooms, and they were interrogated on the interview that Tucker had just done with our ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. And we'll listen to Tucker explain the airport story. And then we're going to go into some problematic comments that Mike Huckabee made through this interview. And some of the answers that he gave Tucker that are pretty telling. So, let me pull Tucker up. All right. Let's start this from the beginning.
backstory behind an interview. It's kind of not the point. It makes it about the interviewer, not the person being interviewed. For one thing. For another, it's not that interesting most of the time. And for another, it's kind of off the record. You know, the other person hasn't consented to you telling the story. So in general, we don't do that. Who'd want to hear that? Let the interview speak for itself. But in this case, we want to tell you just a few things about how this interview came about, because they are pretty interesting, revealing, and now weirdly relevant, apparently. So this interview with Mike Huckabee came about a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. One of our producers showed me. He said something to the effect of, "You're talking to Middle Eastern Christians, Tucker Carlson. Maybe you should talk to me. Why don't you come do an interview?" And I paused for a minute. I've thought in the past about trying to interview Mike Huckabee, whom I've known for over 30 years and worked adjacent to at Fox. And I had mixed feelings about it, mostly because it's hard, if you're me, to interview Mike Huckabee because of just the personal affect. Mike Huckabee is jovial, comes off as friendly. He's a grandfather. When annoyed, I can be nasty in interviews. And so it takes a lot of self-control to interview someone like Mike Huckabee, not because I hate him, but because it's hard to ask him tough questions and not come off as a jerk, which I often am. So, but I thought in this case, yeah, I should definitely do this for a bunch of different reasons. Mainly, the United States is moving toward a big war, a real war with Iran, a regime change war, the biggest war we've had since the invasion of Iraq in the spring of 2003, and Israel is driving that. We are doing this at the behest, at the demand of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So it seems like now is the time for more Americans to understand the dynamic between the U.S. and Israel and to call attention to that. And for another, Huckabee's behavior in the last year in Jerusalem as the ambassador has been very, very striking. He famously had a meeting with the most damaging spy in American history. And why did he do that? He hadn't been asked by anybody up until 2 days ago. Why did you do that? So I wanted to be able to ask him that. And so we accepted, and then began the usual negotiations about when and where the interview would take place. And we were constrained because we weren't expecting this. We wanted to do it quickly, but we had tons of travel. So we threw them a date, them being the American embassy. We can do it on this date, and they were very accommodating. And then the question became, well, where do we do it? And maybe a Christian holy site. We said, we've got to get in and out really quick, got to be back to do a bunch of other interviews, but we've got this time frame. They said, well, why don't you do it at the U.S. Embassy? Or maybe we said that. Great, U.S. Embassy. So the U.S. Embassy is about an hour, 55 minutes from the big airport in Israel, Ben Gurion. So we said, okay, what about security? Now, at this time, the Israeli government, the prime minister included, were attacking me in this show. Netanyahu suggested I was a Nazi, for example. And so we thought, how about security? Obviously. Not because the Israeli government necessarily would do something bad, because there are a lot of people in Israel who think, because they've been told, that I'm an anti-Semite or a Nazi or want to kill Jews. It's kind of crazy overstatement. All untrue, obviously, but it would be good to have security. And I should say, having done interviews on 6 out of 7 continents over 35 years, I'm not very security conscious at all. Never really feel uncomfortable, but this seemed like a prudent thing to do. So we were told by the embassy spokesman, no, we're not going to provide security. And so we said, okay, I guess we'll get private security. But could we get someone from the embassy to ride in the car with us from the airport to the interview? And we were told, no. Could we get what they call a control officer, just an American, with us in an official capacity as an embassy employee with us? No, quote, for legal reasons, we can't do that. So I thought, well, that's very strange. And then they said,
just so you guys know, it's standard procedure, because I looked it up, for there to be an American from the embassy to escort people like Tucker or press in foreign countries when going to do interviews like the one that he did with Mike Huckabee. So for the U.S. Embassy to deny security, or like Tucker said, even a control officer, just an American to go with them, is completely off the norm and doesn't smell right at all.
But instead, we're turning you over to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, MFA, and they're going to arrange everything in Israel. Well, this was within 24 hours of the Deputy Foreign Minister, Sharon Haskell, releasing a video calling me an anti-Semite and an enemy of Israel. This was the person who the embassy was telling us was going to handle all of our travel.
ChatGPT can now create website wireframes. With our new custom GPT.
So it was at this point that I just called. I called the spokesman for the U.S. Embassy in Israel, and I said, okay, I'm an American citizen responding to an invitation from the American ambassador to Israel. And by the way, I'm the son of a U.S. ambassador, so I have some sense, not an expert, obviously, but I have some sense of how this works. And I think that the U.S. ambassador has discretion to send somebody from his office to the airport to accompany someone in. I think that's right. And if it's not right, tell me what law you're talking about, what legal reason you're talking about that would prevent that. And now you're sending me over to a government official who's been calling me a Nazi? That's the person in charge of getting us to the embassy? Like, what is going on here? And the embassy spokesman, who's totally nice, said, well, this was the decision of someone called David Brownstein. He's the DCM, the number 2 guy in the embassy. And I said, well, put him on a text exchange. Like, what is going on here? And so Brownstein got on and didn't answer the question, but basically said, well, okay, let's just do the interview at the airport in the diplomatic reception area at the airport. Okay, I said, we're going to be...
So the U.S. officials suggested that Tucker do the interview at the international terminal at the airport. So he would not be anywhere in Israel, which is pretty interesting in itself.
Flying in from Europe, and we had to be in and out really quickly. So at great expense, we chartered a plane, which I never do because I'm cheap. But we did. And so then I said to them, okay, I want to send you the flight information, tail number, flight number, route, and I want you to pass that on to the Israeli military just so, you know, they don't mistake us for an Iranian drone or something. I mean, not to be paranoid, but again, this is probably the most violent country in the world, Israel. Is there a country in the world where a higher percentage of the population has held a gun or shot someone? I mean, I don't know the answer, but this is a country famously waging a 7-front war with all of its neighbors, you know, so this is also the country that bombed the USS Liberty, knowing, we know this from NSA intercepts, that it was an American ship. So, you know, just send the military our flight information and, you know, we can all just sort of know it's on the record and we can all calm down a little bit. No, they said. The U.S. Embassy said, no. This is, your flight is not a matter of concern to the Israeli military. I said, okay, now you're making me uncomfortable. Isn't the airspace of Israel the purview of the Israeli military? Aren't they in charge of maintaining the integrity of their airspace? When you fly over the country of Israel or any country, its military keeps track of you because that's their job. So why wouldn't you send our flight information to the Israeli military? You're making me nervous. I sent this exchange. I took a screenshot of it and sent it to a bunch of people, including in the U.S. government, because I'm not a paranoid person and I'm not a jumpy person. I said, is this weird behavior? Yeah, it's really weird behavior. All of them said that. So I got pretty aggressive and just said, look, you got to do this. Okay. And they, to their credit, got back to us and said, yes, we will do that. But I just thought that was completely bizarre and menacing, by the way.
Pretty
now,
weird.
at the same time, and I think this is relevant, certainly it goes to motive. I was attempting to set up a meeting, as I have been for the past 3 months, with the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, who I've dealt with a lot in the past, and who denounced me as a Nazi in public, a member of the woke Reich. And why was I trying to do that? Not an interview. I knew he wouldn't sit for an interview, but I wanted just to meet with him in person. One, to show that I'm willing to go to Israel. I don't hate Israel as a country. But two, just to say directly to him, this is bad. This should be de-escalated. This kind of rhetoric doesn't help anybody. Calling me specifically, a Nazi and an anti-Semite when you know that I'm not. By the way, if I was, I would just admit it. I've said many times I think anti-Semitism is immoral. It's against my religion, just as hating any group on the basis of their bloodline is immoral. So the new year is here, but that does not mean you've got to overhaul your whole life, despite claims
this and
anti-Semitism.
then,
Your health deserves more than guesswork. At Prenuvo, our whole body MRI scans for hundreds.
And anti-white racism and all of this, or any kind of racism, period. And I've said that a lot. So using that kind of language against someone who is not fundamentally your enemy, who just, in my case, I want Christians in areas controlled by Israel to be treated with dignity, to have rights. And I don't want the U.S. government involved in a war, a regime change war with Iran. Those are my priorities, and I've said.
Now, if you guys haven't seen Tucker's interviews that he's done recently, before this interview with Huckabee, he sat down with two people. One person from Jordan and one person from Israel. One is I don't know if he's a priest. He's high in one of the Catholic churches. And Christians in Israel are mocked, spit on, harassed, walking down the street, just walking down the street, in the land where Christ lived and died and was resurrected and turned water into wine and walked on water. Christians are treated like the scum of the earth. Yet we choose to make them our greatest ally.
Said them out loud. I have no secret agenda. So to attack me as a Nazi for saying that suggests a total unwillingness to compromise. You know, anyone who doesn't agree with us 100% must be destroyed. His family must be attacked, my family, and must be written off as a Nazi. Well, when you do that, it makes people hysterical. It increases the temperature to a point that, you know, someone's going to get hurt if you keep talking that way. And it's just bad. It's bad for the United States. It's bad for the world. So I wanted to deliver that message. I finally wound up talking to a guy called Yoram Hazony, who is an Israeli who famously organizes the American National Conservatism conferences. And I said to him, look, you're having a National Conservatism conference in Jerusalem this summer. You asked me to speak at the first National Conservatism conference in the United States, and I did. Obviously, I believe in national conservatism, America first. I think every nation should put its own people first. That's why you have governments. And I would like to speak at this one. And moreover, I would like you to ask your friend Benjamin Netanyahu to meet with me. And we had this sort of long back and forth. And it was, no, you cannot speak at the National Conservatism Conference because you're an anti-Semite. No, I'm not, I said. Yes, you are, he said. And I said, well, I really would like to speak to Bibi to kind of de-escalate this. And he said, it would not be in his political interest to meet with you. It's almost verbatim what he said. Therefore, no. So then I realized, you know, you're dealing with people who are unreasonable, who are inflexible, who are in fact fanatical. And then add to that, of course, that my tax dollars are paying them. You know, it was all pretty distressing. So that was the backdrop behind our very brief and highly intense trip to Israel. So we show up on Wednesday, fly in from Europe, again at great expense, and show up at the diplomatic terminal at Ben Gurion Airport where this interview is going to take place, which is bizarre in itself. A filthy building. The windows are so dirty in the terminal you can't see out them barely. There's like exposed drywall. The whole thing is depressing and grim. There's litter outside. Like, what is this? This is the diplomatic terminal in Israel. I thought that was very strange. Having been in a lot of diplomatic terminals, I've never seen a rattier one. We go in, and Huckabee's there, and of course he's totally friendly, as he always is. Very, very friendly guy, and cheerful, and we sort of chat, and the whole place is filled with these guys in T-shirts, thuggish-looking guys in T-shirts who are some kind of security. So we do the interview. You're about to watch it. It's very long, at 2.5 hours-ish, and I try my hardest to be friendly. I think I kind of succeeded. You can judge for yourself. But I really got the sense, and again, you can decide as you watch it, that Huckabee was not able to answer any of the questions, but also not really in charge. You really got the feeling of a guy sort of trying his best to repeat the talking points, but very constrained, like unable to say certain things. Not because those things might harm the interest of the U.S. government. He was happy to attack, for example, the U.S. military and say they're more brutal than the Israeli military. Okay. But unwilling to say certain things because they might reflect poorly on the Israeli government. And you sort of thinking about this for a second, you're like, wait, you're the U.S. ambassador. You're our representative to a foreign country. Why is your red line criticism of that country? Shouldn't you be representing us? And it was very obvious he was representing the Israelis. Obvious. And again, you can judge for yourself. But anyway, so we do this interview. It was cordial. And at the end, we're set to fly out. We have a time. We have to get out. And the plane is sitting right outside. And we're ready to go. And for some reason, the Israelis still have our passports. There are 5 of us there. And 4 of us are flying out on this plane. One's flying out commercial with our gear. So my business partner and I, we're standing there. We've never left the airport, never went anywhere. But our 2 producers have spent the night before in Tel Aviv. And they're called into rooms and given the 3rd degree. Now, keep in mind, they're about to get on a plane and leave. In fact, we're late. We have to get out of there. We have a slot to get out. And security, whoever this is, won't let them go. So I don't really know what's going on at this point. I'm like, where are our guys? We got to get out of here. So one of them comes out and he says, that was the weirdest experience in my life. They asked me questions about the interview. Who did you speak to? Keep in mind, this was like 8 feet from where we did the interview. Well, the U.S. ambassador. I'm like, Huckabee, what did you talk about? Why did you ask those questions? Was it a hostile interview? And of course, everything in the diplomatic terminal is taped. Everything in Israel is taped. It's a police state. It's a surveillance state, obviously. You go to Israel, they put software on your phone. Everybody knows this. They're constantly spying on you more than probably any other country. And so they know the answers to these questions. But they're asking my producer, like, where do you work? How many people work there? Do you go to the office? Where is the office? What are their names? They're doing like an intel op and a humiliation exercise on my producer. This isn't security. We're leaving right now. And they're holding his passport. The interrogator is holding the passport in his hand as he's asking these questions. So he's telling me this. And I said, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. Huckabee's gone by this point. You're an American citizen who's just had a conversation with the U.S. ambassador, and some thug is demanding details of that conversation? And I hope you didn't answer. And he's like, no, I didn't. I don't know what to say. Meanwhile, our last guy, the youngest man who was traveling with us, our last producer, is still in a room being questioned. So I pull over one of the guys and said, we got to get out of here. So I don't know what this is about. It's outrageous. And, you know, there's nothing I can do about this point, but we got to go. And this woman comes up to me and says, look, let's just go. We're going to bring you to the plane and he'll come later. I said, no, it's my producer. He's being interrogated, asked totally over the top fully inappropriate questions that have nothing to do with security at all. Pull up your website, show us your text exchanges with other people on your staff. What are your politics like? And again, what did you say to the U.S. ambassador and what did he say back to you? Those are not relevant questions if you're trying to keep your country secure. Those are intel questions. And they're over the top.
To be honest, sometimes I actually have no idea what's going on until I open Monday.com and boom.
And I said, I want this guy out now. Let's go. We got to go. And they said, no, just leave him here. We'll bring him to the plane later. Twice they told me that. Just leave your guy behind. No, I don't think so. So I was enraged by this. Get on the plane. We get a text from a reporter who somehow knew that this had happened. I have no idea how. I had no interest in publicizing it, actually. There was, a long trail that showed that the U.S. Embassy had been coordinating against us in a public relations battle before we even got there. They were leaking that we demanded to do it at the airport because we were afraid to go into Israel. We're cowards. Okay, we're cowards. Right. And so I just said to the reporter by text, they pulled my guys into a room, interrogating them. This is outrageous, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The interesting thing is I never heard from Huckabee or anybody to this moment from the U.S. Embassy about what security did to my producers. They didn't ask us. And instead, Huckabee went out and called me a liar. So it raises, again, the question, who exactly is Huckabee working for? We're American citizens in a foreign country. He's our ambassador. He represents our country. We pay his salary, but he's taking the side of the foreign government without even calling to say, hey, what happened to you at the airport? Did you get hassled? Did your guys get hassled? No. He just immediately repeats their lies without even consulting us. So, what are we looking at here? We're looking at the reality, which is if you're an American in Israel, you can be certain that your government will take the side of the Israeli government and not your side. And really, is that so different from the experience of Americans in the United States? Can you be sure that your government will take your side over the Israeli government? No, of course not. They will always take the Israeli government's side over yours. And that's the core problem. Even if you support a war with Iran, I think the most pressing issue for Americans is that we kill the Ayatollah or whatever. You still have a fair expectation that your government, because it is yours, you pay for it, it exists to serve you, and for no other reason, you have an expectation that your government will take your side against a foreign government. But the daily lived reality, the obvious truth, visible to every single American, is that's the opposite of reality. In fact, if you criticize Israel in your country, your government will work to censor you. If there's a standoff between you and Bibi, you know whose side your government's going to take, Bibi's side. That is not sustainable. That is too humiliating. It's too clearly an inversion of the natural order. Your government exists for you, not for a foreign government. But that's not how we live in this country or in Israel. So that's...
Oops, what did I do? Oh no, what did I do? I screwed it up. Hold on, guys. Give me a second. I can't believe I just X'd out of it. I apologize.
Went to the surveillance tape inside.
I just made a $27 ebook in 2 minutes using AI. Watch how I did it, so you can do it too.
Is Huckabee working for? We're American citizens in a foreign country. He's our ambassador. He represents our country. We pay his salary, but he's taking the side of the foreign government without even calling to say, hey, what happened to you at the airport? Did you get hassled? Did your guys get hassled? No. He just immediately repeats their lies without even consulting us. So, like, what are we looking at here? We're looking at the reality, which is if you're an American in Israel, you can be certain that your government will take the side of the Israeli government and not your side. And really, is that so different from the experience of Americans in the United States? Can you be sure that your government will take your side over the Israeli government? No, of course not. They will always take the Israeli government's side over yours.
Yep.
And that's the core problem. Even if you support a war with Iran, I think the most pressing issue for Americans is that we kill the Ayatollah or whatever. You still have a fair expectation that your government, because it is yours, you pay for it, it exists to serve you, and for no other reason, you have an expectation that your government will take your side against a foreign government. But the daily lived reality, the obvious truth, visible to every single American, is that's the opposite of reality. In fact, if you criticize Israel in your country, your government will work to censor you. If there's a standoff between you and Bibi, you know whose side your government's going to take, Bibi's side. That is not sustainable.
Nope.
That is too humiliating. It's too clearly an inversion of the natural order. Your government exists for you, not for a foreign government. But that's not how we live in this country or in Israel. So that's what we learned. And one last thing. The Israelis apparently went, probably with the help of Mike Huckabee, went to the surveillance tape inside the diplomatic terminal and pulled some clip, and of course, getting all their little bots online to promote it, of me with my arm around somebody to show that actually I'm lying about what happened. That person was our driver who drove us from the plane to the terminal, a short drive. Very nice guy, good guy, Israeli guy. And the Balfour Declaration is not exactly international law, by the way. It was a letter, I think.
It was maybe not law, but it was a declaration.
Sorry.
Or thought we'd give you the backstory on that. People seem to be more inflamed, not just emotionally, but physically.
That's the story behind Tucker getting detained. Now, I clipped this part of the Huckabee interview, and I'm going to play it for you guys because it's insane what Huckabee even suggests here. And it's scary. It really is scary. So let's go ahead and crank this real quick.
That means only one thing.
Actually, hold on. Give me a second so I could adjust the volume. Ruh-roh. I need to see how I can fix the volume so you guys could hear this. You know what? I'm just gonna, I'll just go to the actual video. Let me just see if I can get timestamp on this. And I'll go to the actual video on Tucker's page. Did I not skip through the ad? Yeah, alright. Okay. Is there a timestamp?
You'll never hear me say that. What you will hear me say is I'm confused by what the definitions are. So let's go through this. You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15.
Can you guys hear that?
It's pre-Abraham. It's Abram. receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land, and you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile.
Hey, somebody comment. Can you guys hear that?
And that would include, like, basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant, so that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be, I mean...
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all of Jordan?
They don't want to take it over. They're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel is legitimate, has this inherent right to exist, is in part because God gave it to his people. And I am going to the same Bible that you're referring to and noticing that that is a huge piece of land.
Okay,
So
we're gonna stop this, and we're gonna go back to Tucker's interview because I found it. We're just gonna skip through this ad in a second. This is because Huckabee is insane.
The shouts are from the river to the sea. And Tucker, that means only one thing. Not the shrinking of Israel, but the annihilation of Israel.
I don't think
that's different.
I don't think you can say that you know what it means, actually, because you don't know what's in people's hearts. So why don't we just deal with the facts? Maybe some people mean it.
I know it's in their mouths. I know it's in their minds.
But I'm not, look, you'll never hear me say that. What you will hear me say is I'm confused by what the definitions are. So let's go through this. You've appealed to Genesis. Genesis 15 says it's Abram, it's pre-Abraham, it's Abram, receives from God the news that his descendants will inherit the land. And you tell me as the theologian if I'm getting this wrong, but from the Euphrates to the Nile. I think that's right. And that would include, like, basically the entire Middle East. That would be the Levant, so that would be Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. It would also be big parts of Saudi Arabia and Iraq. It would be, I mean...
I'm not sure it would go that far. I mean, it would be a big piece of land, but here's the point.
It would be a lot of places that are now countries.
But this particular area that we're talking about now, Israel, is a land that God gave through Abraham to a people that he chose. It was a people, a place, and a purpose. We can look at it that way. Christian Zionism, I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
This is insane.
It would be fine if they took it all. But I don't think that's what we're talking.
Hold on. Let's listen to that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over that. Let's listen to that again.
Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis.
Yeah.
You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
Is he for real? It would be fine if they took it all. The land from the Nile River to the Euphrates, which is literally almost the entire Middle East. Our ambassador to Israel just said it would be fine for them to take it all if they wanted to. So, how about we pull up a map from the Nile River to the Euphrates River with country boundaries or borders. Euphrates. Oh, okay. Where's the map? Okay. Alright, we're gonna do this a different way. Map showing Euphrates, Euphrates River to Nile River with borders. No, that's a shitty map. Let's go to... If we click on maps, will it show it? Can we zoom in? Okay, yeah, we can. Alright, so... There's the Euphrates. The Euphrates River, right there. Right. And the Nile River. Let's see. Where's the Nile River? So, our ambassador to Israel just said it would be fine for Israel to take Iraq, Syria, Jordan, parts of Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Egypt, Lebanon. It would be fine for them to take it if they wanted to, but they don't want to. Sure they don't. Sure they don't.
Talking about here today.
What would be fine? Well, it's exactly what we're talking about today.
But here's what I don't think
you think it would be fine if the state of Israel took over all of Jordan?
They don't want to take it over. that they're not asking to take it over.
But you're saying that the reason that Israel is legitimate, has this inherent right to exist, is in part because God gave it to his people. And I am going to the same Bible that you're referring to and noticing that that is a huge piece of land. So if God gave them that land, then they have a right to take it now by your definition, unless I'm missing something completely.
Well, I think you're missing something, because they're not asking to go back to take all of that, but they are asking to at least take the land that they now occupy, they now live in, they now own legitimately, and it is a safe haven for them.
Well, but may I ask though, because you're explaining what Christian Zionism is and your theological beliefs. And I think you just said it would be fine with you if the state of Israel took all of Jordan, all of Syria, all of...
You can turn your newsletter into an actual business. You just need to stop using 5 platforms to do what one was...
of Lebanon.
That's really not exactly what I'm trying to say.
I'm asking,
Tucker.
is that what you said? I thought that's what you just said.
It was somewhat of a hyperbolic statement in that, if that's what you feel like that we're talking about, but it isn't. We're talking about this land that Israel, the state of Israel, now lives in and wants to have peace in. They're not trying to take over Jordan. They're not trying to take over Syria. They're not trying to take over Iraq or anywhere else. But they do want to protect
Lebanon?
their people. No, they're not trying to take over Lebanon.
But you're saying that as a religious man, as a Christian Zionist, you agree with a lot of religious communities here in Israel that the justification for this country is theological. It's a contract between God and his people. And I'm telling you that that contract includes a tract of land that is much larger than the current nation state.
So you may be a bigger Zionist than even the Jews are that live in Israel.
I'm trying to understand the implications of your theology for geopolitics, because you're saying that the present government of Israel has a moral right to take over what are now other people's countries.
No, I didn't say that.
Then what are you saying?
I'm simply saying that the people who live in Israel, I think, have a right to have security, have safety. They have a right to be able to live in this land that they have a connection to for 30.
I told myself when I said a prayer that I would not get annoyed, but
I'm going to pause this for a second, right? And I'm going to bring up a post. Share this. Now, this is a patch from an IDF soldier. And if you look at the patch, that is not a map of Israel on the patch. That is a map of the land from the Euphrates to the Nile. So, in case you guys haven't heard of the Greater Israel Project, that's exactly what they're talking about. Israel has no plans on stopping with Gaza or the West Bank or Lebanon. Their entire goal is to take Syria, Lebanon, half of Iraq, Saudi Arabia, the entire coast of Egypt, Jordan. This is what Israel is working towards. This is what they believe they are entitled to. And our ambassador to Israel said it would be fine if they wanted to take it. They just don't want to take it. So, are you telling me that Israel has no plans to take that land when that is the patch that is on the Israeli military uniform? Why would that be their patch? And not just a map of Israel? Just asking questions. I'm just curious, you know, trying to make it make sense. I can't really make it make sense.
You know, the father of daughters, when I see child molesters hiding in Israel and escaping American justice, I think I have a right to safety in my country too. So you can understand that I think most people feel they have a right to safety. I do think Israel has a right to safety, and I hope that for them. And I'm sincere, but I'm an American, and I have a right to safety in my country too. Of course you do. Agree? And I think so.
What if you can create your own website by saying, this is what I want? With Wix, you can.
I just want to get to this point. If Israel were to say, God gave us in Genesis 15, all of Lebanon, all of Syria, all the way up to Iraq, would that be legitimate in your view?
I don't think in this particular day and time they're asking for it.
Would it be legitimate?
I'm not sure that it would be.
Why? Because you just said that God
because
gave it
I
to
think
them.
that there is an understanding that the people of Israel today, now if they end up getting attacked by all these places and they win that war and they take that land, then okay, that's a whole nother discussion. But you and I started out.
So if they get attacked by these other countries and they take that land, it's okay then. Now, I don't know if you guys know what's really been going on in Israel and in Gaza, but Gaza has been an open-air prison for years. And the Israeli government controls everything that comes in and out of Gaza. It's surrounded by walls that are 20 feet high with gun perches every 20 yards. Checkpoints everywhere. And every time that Israel did some sort of military campaign against Gaza, the justification was there were rocket attacks coming from Gaza into Israel. Well, how did the rockets get into Gaza if Israel controls everything that gets into Gaza? How did October 7th happen? And it was 6 hours before there was any sort of military response to the attack going on. When Israel is the size of New Jersey, and Gaza is the size of 2 or 3 towns. Yet it took 6 hours for the military to respond to the attack that was going on in Israel. And isn't it funny that Charlie Kirk started asking questions about this? Because none of it makes sense. Maybe they let it happen to justify this? Justify the genocide because they have a right to defend themselves?
We started talking about something simple. Christian Zionism.
But it turns out it's
and
not
now
simple because the core of Christian Zionism, you said, and I'm quoting you, is the understanding, the belief, the theological understanding that Jews have a moral and legal, we went through the legal,
biblical,
moral deriving from the biblical, from the promises in our Bible, which we share with the Jewish people, the first part of it, the Old Testament, that it derives from God's promise to the Jews. And so I have two questions. What are the borders of that? And who are those people in 2026? And you're not the first person I've asked, but you're the most reasonable, most gentle, most theologically informed person. So I'm really hoping for an answer.
Yeah.
The first question was the borders. I can't get an answer. Yeah. What those borders are. So I'm going to give up. But the second question is every bit as pressing, which is who are the people? Who are the modern? Yes. Who are the descendants? So we know, and I believe, and I agree with you as a Christian, that God promised this land from modern day Iraq to modern day Egypt to this people, the Jews, to Abram's, actually not to Abram's descendants, as it says in Genesis 15. Who are his descendants now, and how do we know who they are?
I think they're the Jews, and we know who they are because they've always been a Jewish people. There has been an unbroken line of Jewish people, and they've lived in this land for 3,800 years. Sometimes not very many of them, because they were chased out all over the world. They were hunted down. They were almost annihilated during the Holocaust. They came back. To this day, Tucker, they represent, you know how many Jews there are in the whole world?
Please,
No,
I understand. First of all, the greatest genocide of Jews no one ever mentions was by the Romans, where they were literally banned from Jerusalem for 500 years.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all awful. And I'm opposed to all of that. I'm opposed to mass killing of anybody, period. I'm opposed to
hear you say that.
I mean it.
Yeah.
And I hope
I
we can
believe
agree
that.
on that.
I believe that.
My question is, and it's not a bumper sticker answer, it's a sincere answer, how do we know? Because what you're saying is that certain people have a title to a highly contested region. They own it in some deep sense.
The real reason podcasters, publishers, and event organizers say no to speakers, even ones with...
So I think it's fair to ask, who are they and how do we know? So the current prime minister's ancestors weren't from here within recorded history. He has no deed. Bibi Netanyahu, on one side, his family's from Poland. They're from Eastern Europe. So how do we know that he has a connection to the people who God promised the land to, Abram's descendants? How do we know that?
Well, if you take the genealogies that come not only from the Old but the New Testament, you see that there is a historical connection through the entirety of the Old and the New Testament that details the Jewish connection to this land.
Does that include Bibi's family? How do we know that if his family
they were
comes here,
scattered?
But how do we know it's the same people? Why is that crazy? If you say to me,
if they speak the same language, if they worship the same God, if they follow the same Bible, if they follow the same cultures and traditions, and they always pray next year in Jerusalem, and they pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and they pray facing toward Jerusalem, does that not give you a little bit of a clue as to who they are?
Let's go through those things, because I would like to have a rational This is a conversation I've wanted. Bless you. Thank you for doing this. Let's just go through those things.
Okay.
So one of the things I admire most about Israel is they resurrected a dead language in 1948. Good for them.
Well, they really didn't resurrect it. It was existent.
Okay, that's a compliment. I'm not slighting
No,
anybody.
but it is the first time in all of human history that a language has survived through this length of time. It's I would call it, you might not, but I would call it a miracle. One of many that you can attribute to this
I
land.
think it's wonderful as someone who loves language. Netanyahu's parents did not speak Hebrew. Okay, they didn't live in this region. Netanyahu, the founders of this country, were mostly secular. Some of them were avowed atheists. They were not praying for the peace of Jerusalem. They weren't praying at all because they didn't believe in God. There's no genealogy linking their families to the people of this land 3,000 years ago. They're not. So how do we know, since they didn't share a language, they didn't share a religion, they had no religion whatsoever, how do we know that they had a right to come here from Eastern Europe and
but they were
take
scattered.
the land?
They were scattered to Eastern Europe. They were scattered all over the world. There were many in Ethiopia. They were in Russia. They were in Poland. They were throughout Asia. Jews were all over the place, but they were still Jews. But they were still Jews.
Okay,
That's
so then
what
let
made
me
them
get to the nub of the question, since again, a lot is at stake, a lot of money is at stake. Land is very valuable. Israel has a lot of resources. By the way, if you're accused of a crime, you can hide here. That's a pretty good passport to have. It's a good thing, right? So who's entitled to it? I don't understand, and you're very discouraged in the United States from asking this question for some reason. It's a totally rational
I'm
question.
not discouraged.
No, you're not discouraging.
Yeah.
Others do. You're like the only person I can have this conversation with. Everyone else will be like, shut up, Nazi. It's a foundational question. Are you speaking of an ethnic group or a religious group?
Well, I think you're looking at, for many people, it is religious. There are people who may not have a deep religious connection to Judaism, but they're still Jews.
Okay, so it's an ethnic category.
It is ethnic, but it is also religious. It is rooted in religion. You can't take it out of it. Now that means
then how can an atheist?
Well, I will tell you this: there are some people who say, "I'm Christian." They never go to church. They never pray. They never read their Bible. They don't tithe.
But they're not entitled to citizenship on the basis of that.
Well,
they're
but
not
I'm saying
entitled
that they still call themselves Christian, even though they identify in that way.
Here's the difference. You're saying that people who have this identification have a deed to a huge chunk of land on the Mediterranean. Okay, so there's, it's a right. You keep telling me it's a right, and so it's totally fair to say they weren't religious at all. They were atheists. They said they were atheists. I believe them. So that suggests it's ethnic, but it's also true, as you well know, because there's a famous court case about this, that ethnic Jews who convert to Christianity do not have the right of return. That was settled by the Israeli Supreme Court. I'm very confused. So that would suggest it's not ethnicity, because you invalidate your Jewishness by converting to Christianity?
There are a number of Messianic Jews who live in Israel.
Okay.
Who are here.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that
number.
But you're not contesting what I'm saying, because it's a very famous court case.
The right of return has to do with your mother, your grandmother. It has to do with family ties.
It's ethnic.
There's a lot of, sure, ethnicity is a big part of the right of return.
Great.
To make aliyah, to come to Israel, to live here.
Then if both of your parents are Jewish and you have an ethnic right to
EVE Online is a
the land, you are one of Abram's descendants, but you convert to Christianity. How is it you don't have the right to return? I'm totally confused.
But I know a number of people who have returned as Christians, but have Jewish history.
Are
and
you
Jewish
saying that Jews who convert to Christianity have a right, a legal right to return? Because I
know that they do. Whether, when you say, do they have a right to return? Do they prove?
It's a legal category, as in any government.
Which is by their family history, their grandmother, their mother, and there are many aspects of that.
I've read it. I think,
but I know that these are people who are Christian, and they came here, made aliyah. They had Jewish blood, Jewish history. They were Christian, Messianic, but they came here, and they were welcomed here.
And they were given full legal rights.
Absolutely.
And a passport.
Yeah.
So clearly, it's not true that you invalidate your right of return by converting to Christianity. That's just false.
I'm not aware of that. I know that there are a number of Christians here. I go to church with Christians every week here.
Of course.
And
but do you have a right to come and say, I am an ethnic Jew, even though I practice Christianity, therefore I have every bit as much right to move into a settlement in the West Bank or into East Jerusalem or anywhere I want, Galilee, anywhere, because I'm returning to the land of my forefathers. I have a legal right in the state of Israel, even though I've converted to Christianity. You're saying that's true?
I'm saying I know people who've done it. Now, can I tell you what the law specifically is? I'm not sure. Because
it's really
I'm a Christian. I don't have any Jewish roots, so therefore I cannot quote you the law. If you want me to do that, I'll look at it.
Well, it really matters because you're saying, in fact, people in the United States are being called anti-Semites. A lot of them, including me, because they somehow don't believe that Israel has a right to this land.
Do you think Israel has a right to this land?
No, you haven't defined what the land is, and you haven't defined who Israel is. So I really don't know.
It is the land they're living in now, the borders that they have.
The borders are moving. The borders have moved in the last year.
What do you mean the borders have moved?
Well, they are the 1967 borders. I'm including, the
East
West
Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria.
What are the borders of Judea and Samaria?
Well, you basically take the Jordan River, and it's west of the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, to the Lebanon border. And Israel did have control of the Sinai. They gave that to Egypt. They had control of it.
Right.
They gave it away in 1979 in the peace agreement.
But, okay.
So
whatever you call it, the land that was taken from Jordan in 1967, you call it Judea and Samaria. There's a significance to that that I don't fully understand. I'm not against it. I don't really know what it means. It's the biblical
terms. 80% of the Bible happened in Judea and Samaria.
But we've also established that the Bible gives Jews the right to occupy the land from the Nile to the Euphrates. So I'm very confused by why we've shrunk the land and why we're
Israel has shrunk the land. They have made that decision. Okay. That's why they gave away Gaza. They gave away the Sinai.
Now's the part
They've
for
given
the
away
real
a
question.
lot of things.
Abram's descendants are the ones who have the right to have this land, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't we do genetic testing on everybody in the land and find out who Abram's descendants are? It's really simple. We've cracked the human genome. We can do that. Why don't we do that? Would you be against doing that?
I have no idea what that would prove. I mean, maybe it would be.
What do you mean? It would prove who Abram's descendants are and who has a right to live here and who doesn't, according to the theology that you yourself just explained. And so I'm very confused as to why we don't do that. If you believe the theology that you've just explained to me.
Would we do that all over the world?
Well,
and everybody
this is the only country in the world that you've said has this covenant with God, that this people have a moral and legal right to the land.
What about people who convert to Judaism? Would they have a right?
Well, you've just said.
I mean,
that
there are
it's not
converts to Judaism, so
you just told
they
me
can make Aliyah. They may not have.
You've just
DNA.
told me that it doesn't matter. You told me moments ago, trying to keep track, that it doesn't matter whether or not you believe in God or whether or not you practice Torah Judaism or Rabbinic Judaism, which is something else that I don't even know if we should, I don't even know what that means. But it doesn't matter whether you're, quote, a religious Jew or not. What matters is that you are part of the Jewish people to whom God gave this land that extends from the Nile to the Euphrates. And so if you believe that, wouldn't you want to know with a burning passion who those people are? And because of science, we can now know who those people are. So why aren't we finding out?
I guess you could propose a DNA test for everybody who comes here, everybody who lives here. But the point
I'm comfortable with secular nation states where none of this is done on the basis of blood. I'm uncomfortable with that. I'll just say that.
But there are people who may not have bloodlines, but who have converted to Judaism. Are they going to be able to live here? Are you going to kick them out?
By your standards, they can't live here.
No,
because
no,
you
I've
just
never
told
said,
me
no.
they have a right to live here because God gave them the land because they're the descendants of Abram.
They're the descendants of Abraham. But if they're the spiritual descendants of Abraham and they've now decided that they're converting to Judaism, then do they have a right to live in Israel?
Well, there's a whole legal literature in Israel on that question. And
discover a unique investment opportunity in the heart of the Caribbean. Larimar City and Resort is an innovative smart city, unlike any other in the region, located in Punta Cana, one of the fastest growing tourist destinations. Surrounded by lush, tropical nature, it combines technology, sustainability, and well-being, offering a modern lifestyle and strong long-term value for investors. Discover Larimar City and Resort.
That winning feeling you love? Bring it everywhere you go with the Hollywood Casino app. Your next big thrill is just a tap away. New players get 300 bonus spins, plus up to 1,000 back in casino credits. Hollywood Casino. Download and play today.
my understanding is that certain types of modern Judaism qualify a person and other types don't. Is that your understanding? I don't believe that people converted, and I could have this wrong, but I know people who face this personally, know people, I don't believe people who've converted in a Reform synagogue have the right of return. I don't think that is, because I know people who've married into Jewish families and they find out they don't have the right of return. So that is perplexing to me.
Yeah, I know, my experience is a little different than yours. I know people who have definite Jewish connections, family relations, but now they're Christian. Some are not necessarily practicing Jews. They're not, they're more secular Jews, as you've discussed, but they come back here.
Okay, I'm not against that. I'm just wondering, since you began this conversation by asking me, did I think they had a right to come here?
Yeah, that's
and
what
my question
Zionism
was,
is.
on what basis do they have the right?
Yeah.
And
And
you
I tried
said
to-
because God granted it to them.
And I also said because that there should be a land where Jews can live in peace and safety.
And I asked you what a Jew was, and you couldn't answer it. You
No, I
said
didn't
it partly is religious, but doesn't have to be. It's partly genetic, but it doesn't have to be. And so that you can see why I'm confused.
I think I was very clear that being Jewish is an identification either through blood or through faith that you're Jewish. It may be that you're a blood Jew, but you don't necessarily practice Judaism, just like there are people who say they're Christian, but they don't do a thing to demonstrate what Christian
There are a lot of bad Christians, including me some of the time, a lot of the time. But I don't have a right to real estate on the basis of my claim of
You
Christianity.
don't have a right to real estate if you're talking about a specific parcel. But if you're talking about a land, I think what we're talking
That's
about
real
is
estate. That's all I'm,
yeah,
all I'm saying.
And
So-
there was a designation to the family of nations of the world that there would be a Jewish homeland. Let's get to that point, because I think you've taken us on several trails here, and I'm not sure we can follow them all. But is there a reason that the Jewish people that represent, and I want to get back to this because you didn't let me finish a while ago, they represent 0.2% of the world's population. In the entirety of the world, there are about 16 million Jews total, and 8 million of them live here. The rest live mostly in New York or South Florida and a few other places.
Okay.
So this is a small population of people. They have connection to this land historically, biblically.
Do they?
Yes, they do.
If Bibi's family, we know they lived in Eastern Europe. There's no evidence they ever lived here. He's not religious.
But
in what sense
ancestrally- but
how do we know
ancestrally-
that? Do you have his family tree? No, we don't.
Do you?
He doesn't. So no one does. That's the point.
But
So
if
how do
there
we
is-
know that he
but
has any
if they
connection
are
to this land at
Jewish,
all?
And if there has been a practice of Judaism and a connection to the language,
But
the
he
Bible,
doesn't-
the land.
His ancestors didn't. He doesn't practice Judaism in any rigorous way. His ancestors didn't live here. They didn't speak the language, and there's no evidence they ever lived here. So on what basis does he have a right
Very
to be
much
here?
speaks the language. He has fought for the land. His family has fought for the
You're
land.
dodging a
No, I'm not
very
dodging.
obvious question, which is where does this right come from? And the
I've-
reason
I've
it's
given you
meaningful
that
is
answer.
because there are a lot of people in the territory that Israel controls today, particularly in the West Bank, who, through genetic testing, we can know their families have been here for thousands of years. We don't know whether they practiced Judaism, whether they were Samaritans, pre-Islam. We don't know that. A lot of them we know have been Christians for 2,000 years. They have less of a right to the land than someone whose ancestors, the only thing we know about them is they lived in Latvia or Poland. They're Eastern European. How does that work?
They're Jewish.
By what definition?
They're Jewish by their
But how do we know they have any
ethnicity.
connection
They're
to
Jewish
the Jews
by their
of the,
faith. They're
of the
Jewish
Bible?
by the connection to the language. Jewish by the connection to the Torah.
But how do we know that Bibi, specifically Bibi's ancestors, ever lived here? How do we know that?
I'm not sure if I understand your question.
How do we know if the Prime Minister of Israel's ancestors ever lived?
Maybe I could ask you, how do we know they didn't? I mean,
well, it's on the basis of the claim that they did that all kinds of things happen. People are displaced. There's a money flow. I mean, it's a big question. A lot hangs on this. It's not some theoretical thing like, oh, did my grandparents do this or do that? It's like, no, we have a right to be here because my ancestors were here. Okay, how do we know they were here?
I'm totally...
You're leaving money on the table. Not because your content isn't good, but because the tools you're using weren't built to help you earn sustainable revenue. Beehive is the all-in-one newsletter platform to run your digital business. Design your newsletter. Build your site.
unable to process what you're trying to get at. It goes back, do Jewish people have any land on this planet that should be theirs to
I
give
feel
them?
that way about all peoples. I feel that way about Jewish peoples. I feel that way about...
Okay, then you don't mind them having
Is
this
there
little
any
sliver of land,
country, let me
right?
ask you this bluntly, is there any country that European peoples have a right to exclusively?
I think they have attained their land through conquest. I mean, let's ask
Have
ourselves.
the Britons
do
attained
the
their land through
Romans-
conquest? No, they've always been there.
The Romans, the Greeks, we've had all these
let's
civilizations.
speak. Let's speak. Well, you could certainly say that here. The Romans controlled this, as you know, and they expelled
But they
all
don't
the Jews
anymore.
from Jerusalem. Amen. I don't want them to control it.
Hope not.
I'm anti-Roman. Okay, we're on the same page.
Okay.
But my question is very simple. Is there any European peoples that possesses the same right to their land that the Jews, including people whose ancestors lived in Eastern Europe, possess here? The Britons, we know, the British people, the Scandinavian people, the Irish people, their ancestors have been there for thousands of years. That's provable through genetic testing. Do they have a right to their land exclusively?
Is anyone saying they don't?
Yes, of course. Yes. No one will say they will. And I'm asking you, do they have that right?
And I'm not sure what that question involves, because no one is trying to force them out of their land, of their homes. But here,
Wait, hold on.
you
Let me
have
just,
people...
why won't you answer that question?
Because I just did.
Oh, so the Irish people have the same right to their land that the
I don't
Jews
know that they
have
have
to
a biblical connection.
Okay.
But I'm a Bible believer.
Okay.
So that is
But it's also
important to me.
it's also a principle. And that is, and you've said it 15 times.
Sometimes people have land because they were able to attain it through war. They were able to obtain it when it was challenged.
I understand that. There's all kinds of consequences. But we can't say that about the Irish.
The world borders
Hold on.
change all the time.
Not actually, the borders of the island of England have not changed, nor
but the
island of
governance
Ireland.
does.
Those are just two examples. So
Yeah.
you've got the indigenous people there. Do they have a moral right to that as their homeland?
And I think they would probably say, yes, we do, because we have ancient history to it. I've never thought about whether
now
they...
that I'm raising the question, and you've spent a lot of time thinking about the right of the Jewish people to their homeland, do the Irish have the same right to a homeland?
As long as they can defend it, and as long as they,
as long as they can defend it.
But Tucker, here's the point.
Wait a second.
I'm telling you...
Wait, hold on. Now you just flipped category. You're the minister here.
Yeah, and I'm telling
as
you...
long as they can defend it. And if they can't
you're
defend
not
it, they
allowing
lose
me
the
to
right.
tell you that I think that what is very, very special here is that there is a biblical, as well as an ethnic, and a historical. So you can take any one, but if you add them all together, biblical, historical, and ethnic, you have a very strong case that the Jewish people are living in a land that is indigenous to them, that has been their historic homeland for 3,800 years.
You can repeat it as
And you can
as
also
often as
look in
you
the
want.
archaeology, the stones cry out.
Okay.
Have you been to the city of David, for example?
I have. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So you know then that...
And I love it.
It's an amazing
I
place.
agree.
It may be the greatest archaeological discovery in all of history because
great.
it's stunning. And they still continue to find things that date the Jewish people to this land archaeologically for 3,800 years.
We can date the British people to their land much longer, thousands of years longer. Stonehenge is 3,000 years older than any building built by the descendants of Abram in this country. And so it's fine. I'm not trying to invalidate anyone's right. I'm just wanting you to affirm that right, but it makes you uncomfortable and you won't. And I don't know why.
Because I've never honestly sat down and asked myself, are the lines around the
It's an
United
island, so we know what the
Kingdom-
lines are.
I'm saying, but are those lines, are those rooted in something other than the historical connection? Well, great, then they should have it. But
And
that's
they have a
question.
right to have it. But then you said if they can defend it, and if they can't defend it, they lose the right.
But I didn't say it was exclusive one or the other. I think you're really going off the trail.
I just want to know if these principles apply universally or if they only apply to the people of Israel. And my answer appears to be just the people of Israel. They're the only ones with these rights, and I just reject that as a Christian.
I didn't say that, but I'm saying we are talking about Israel. We're in Israel. We're talking about Christian Zionism because you've made some disparaging statements about Christian Zionists. You've apologized for them, for which I appreciate. And now we're trying to define Christian and Zionist. And it seems like we've gone way, way off
I'm
of
trying
that.
to get, as you suggested as a former debater at the outset, I'm trying to get to terms.
Christian and Zionist is like saying Judeo-Christian values. They're incompatible. The Jewish people believe that their Messiah will be a king that unites the Jewish people under one land. He will be a man that will build the third temple. That is the Antichrist in Christianity and the Catholic faith. Anybody that tells you Judeo-Christian values are what we should believe in maybe should read the book of Revelation, because they are not the same. Their Messiah is our Antichrist. Very simple. There should be no confusion about this. And all these pastors that are out here preaching Christian Zionism, it is a made up, it's a made up thing. It is something that was cooked up to get Christian support for the Israeli cause. And it worked. Because look at all the people that go to these mega churches, like Calvary Chapel, and all these churches that are associated with Turning Point, and all these pastors that are being flown to Israel and staying there for weeks at a time and having their trips paid for and their meals paid for, and they have to go to classes to learn how to present Christianity in a way that shows Israel in a positive light. That's what they're going there to do. Anybody that tells you that Judeo-Christian values exist is lying to you or is completely ignorant of the religions. With that, I have been on here for 2.5 hours. I went to work at 2:30 in the morning. I got home at 12 in the afternoon. I have been on here since like 4. I need to eat. I need to sleep. I appreciate you guys all turning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, subscribe, comment. If you guys are here watching and you see the title about the Charlie Kirk thing, you should probably start this from the beginning and your mind is going to be blown. Because there's they're still wiping information off the internet, and I showed proof of it earlier in the episode. So your screen just got suspended. Really? Wow.